Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to the People's Health hearing at the People's Summit for Climate Justice in parallel to COP26 at Glasgow. My name is Baj. I'm part of the People's Health Movement. I'm one of the co-organizers of this event, and we are so thrilled to have you with us today. This event today is a combination of lots of work by many people over weeks, months, years, decades, so that we could all be here today. I'm just going to let my co-facilitator for the session today introduce themselves. So Rhiannon, if you'd like to say hi.
Hi, I'm Rhiannon. I'm a health justice campaigner based in the UK. And yeah, I'm a student as well. And oh yeah, my pronouns are she, her. And Baj, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Oh, I think I did.
Oh, sorry. Do it again.
I think I did. Yeah, I'm Baj, pronouns he, they, with the People's Health Movement. I'm currently in Kolkata in India, but most of my time I'm in Giajage, Canada, which some of you may know as Montreal. So to begin the session today, we have a pretty busy, fantastic session for you for the beginning of the People's Health hearing. We are maybe going to start, Rhiannon, with, if you'd like to start with some of, well, maybe I'll give a little bit of a background first about how the People's Health hearing came about. The People's Health hearing is a space that we've been convening over a number of months. The idea sort of crystallized maybe earlier this year through work with excuse me, through the From the Ground Up COP26 coalition. And we've been having discussions about the health impact of climate change and extractivism with activists and organizers around the world through several events over the last year or so. The idea for the hearing probably crystallized around April, and a number of organizations came together to hold this space virtually for us to be able to connect around health struggles linked to extractivism and climate change in parallel to COP26 here at the People's Summit. The organizations involved are MedAct, People's Health Movement, particularly the Ecosystems and Health Circle of the People's Health Movement, Students for Global Health, Actions Speak Louder Than Words, Race and Health, and I just realized I'm forgetting one of them through the list. Let me just make sure that I have everyone on that list.
Health for the Future.
That's right, Health for the Future. That's one of the ones I was missing. We've brought together listeners from around the world to hear your testimony. And I'm going to let Rhiannon maybe talk a little bit more about the intentions of the space and how today is going to run a little bit better.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Baj, for that introduction, and thank you so much to so many of you for coming. It's so beautiful to have so many of you with us today. So when we were creating the hearing, we had like a long think about the intentions of what we wanted to do with today, and how we make this more about one event, but about building a movement within health and climate justice. So the hearing seeks to be part of ongoing organizing going forward, which also helps us relax a bit today, so we don't have to feel like we have to do everything and cover everything today, because the work is going to continue, and this is not the start because we started a while ago, but somewhere in the middle. And it's part of organizing around COP26, and it's a really powerful space to hold space for people to share stories and testimonies, in particular reflecting on the fact that this is the most exclusive COP ever, and it's really important that we give space and respect to voices who have been excluded from that COP, and it gives space for everyone to share their testimony.
Thanks very much, Abby. So we would like to bring us together into this space and acknowledge that we're gathering together as one. There is an echo if somebody wants to, yes. And so we would like to ground us in being in this space together. So I'm actually going to invite Abby to come back and guide us through a little ceremony that marks the beginning of this gathering and helps us ground us in being together and listening together today. So Abby.
Thank you, Baj. So this is, I'll start with playing some music as well. So this ceremony is traditional to where I'm from in Sri Lanka. It's called the AkpoBari, and it starts off by blowing the conch shell, which is a traditional invocation at the start of any auspicious ceremony. It's an ancient custom to present this music when we're seeking blessings of the guardian deities of the land. And we can hear the AkpoBari drums, which have a very traditional significance in Sri Lankan culture as they mark auspicious celebrations and occasions. And I will start by lighting the lamp virtually. If we can have the music in the background, please. Can you shut the window, please? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abby, for welcoming us to the space so beautifully. And yeah, welcome again to everyone who's joined us. It really is so amazing to have you all with us. So we're going to move on to hearing our first testimony, and I'll introduce the first speaker now. So our first testimony is from AkpoBari Celestine, who's an Ogoni-born environmental and human rights defender based in the oil-rich but economically disempowered and environmentally devastated Niger Delta region of Nigeria. He started his activism from an oil palm plantation where he led a successful protest against the oppressive management team, even as a casual field worker. And that action automatically pushed him to become the branch of the Agricultural and Allied Workers Union of Nigeria. Upon the execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 others, he left the plantation to volunteer for the mainstream human rights community, from where he established the Nigeria Charter of the Ogoni Solidarity Forum-Nigeria and the People's Advancement Center to train young Ogoni activists and advance the non-violent struggle initiated by Ken Saro-Wiwa. So it is such an honor to have you with us, and we're so excited to hear your testimony. And I will now hand over to AkpoBari.
Thank you very much. Good morning from here. Good afternoon from some other places, and evening too. It is a delight, and pleasure to be with you this hour to share our experiences. I have some wonderful friends in the room already. Beverly and Paul from the International Indigenous Peoples Movement. Ken Saro, my friends here, and Ben that I met recently. Without wasting much time, for those who may not know much about the Ogoni struggle, I think I will just do a brief intro before I share what the Ogoni people have suffered headwise from the devastation of their land. Ogoni is one indigenous ethnic nationality based in the Niger Delta. Niger Delta is an oil-rich belt of Nigeria. All the oil wells in Nigeria are located in the Niger Delta, the largest wetland in the world. Unfortunately, it entered development and darkness and poverty in the Niger Delta is much more than every other region in Nigeria. Ogoni oil was discovered in Ogoni in commercial quantity in 1958. As of today, Ogoni is over 1 million in population, and we are located in the South-South region, where we call the South-South region of Nigeria. There are 96 oil wells connected to 5 oil fields where gas was flared 24 hours every day in close proximity to human habitation up to 1993, when Shell was sacked from Ogoni land after over 3 decades of unconscionable oil and gas exploitation. In 1990, Ogoni people took stock of their condition and found out that in spite of the stupendous oil and gas wealth of their land, and which had fed Nigerian ruling elite at the nation, that they were extremely poor. They had no social amenities. Unemployment was running higher, and worse still, their environment was severely devastated by 3 decades of reckless oil exploitation, or what the Ogoni people love to call ecological warfare against the people by Shell. In short, Ogoni were faced with environmental degradation, political marginalization, economic strangulation, slavery, and possible extinction. They went further to adopt a Bill of Rights, what we now know as the Ogoni Bill of Rights, which was presented to the government and people of Nigeria in October 1990. In the bill, Ogoni people demanded for political control of affairs by Ogoni people, because we live in a country that are multi-ethnic in nature. And so you see an Ogoni man go to school and he's forced to study the language of other people. Like in Nigeria, we have only 3 languages approved to be spoken in the public. And those 3 are in the school curricula. So the Ogoni man is being forced to study those languages. So what happened to our own language? So we are asking that Ogoni people, should control Ogoni affairs. We're asking for the right to control and use fair proportion of the economic resources from Ogoni for Ogoni development. Because all the oil taken from Ogoni, oil and gas, all the money are paid to somebody in Abuja that does not know the road to Niger Delta. Even the signature bonus, even the rent and royalty that should go directly to community people is paid to somebody in faraway Abuja. And we also demanded that we should have adequate and direct representation as of right in all Nigerian national institutions, because we had a situation where somebody from a different ethnic nationality is representing Ogoni in the lawmaking chamber or as the governor. So we asked for direct representation. We also asked that they use the development of Ogoni languages in Ogoni territory, meaning that Ogoni languages should be approved in school curriculum within the Ogoni territory. And finally, we asked for the right to protect Ogoni environment and ecology from further degradation. We made the above demand in the knowledge that it does not deny any other ethnic nationality in Nigeria of their own right. But we are conscious of the fact that we are indigenous ethnic nationality with different culture and language. We are different in Nigeria. It's just by accident of history or for the administrative convenience of the colonial masters that lumped different ethnic nationalities together for their own administrative convenience and selfish reason. Otherwise, we have no business sharing the current day Nigeria with any other ethnic nationality. This struggle united our people in such a way that the Nigerian state was frightened that if something is not done, that other ethnic nationalities will copy from what the Ogoni people were doing. So they infiltrated the ranks of Movement for the Survival of Ogoni people in a bid to destroy the struggle. When that did not work, there was a direct military invasion of Ogoni territory. They passed through neighboring communities, invaded the community, launched full-blown war against Ogoni, killing everybody that they attacked Ken Saro-Wiwa soldiers. So if you're a young man and you are traveling out of Ogoni, they will stop the bus on the road. They remove all the young men and ask the women to leave, and they will execute them. Just like that, daylight, no offense committed. And after that did not work, they planned a way of killing some members of the Movement for the Survival of Ogoni people, and later accused Ken Saro-Wiwa of killing them. Precisely on May 21st, 1994, 4 Ogoni leaders were killed. And Ken Saro-Wiwa was accused to have killed the people. So they arrested Ken, who was not even there, and put up a kangaroo military tribunal that sentenced him to death by hanging in October 1995. He was given 30 days right of appeal. While Ken Saro-Wiwa was yet firing the paper with others, Ken with 8 others were marched into an unserviced gallows in Port Harcourt and executed. That did not go down well with the Ogoni people and the human rights community all over the world. Most of you know there were protests everywhere and agitations. In fact, Nigeria was suspended from the Commonwealth and quite a lot of things happened. The Ogoni people were pushed to the wall. We lost our patience because one of the best that you can ever showcase in the whole world was executed like a common criminal. So if Ken Saro-Wiwa, that was the best that we look up to as our leader, as we killed the way he was killed, that there was no use living any life. There was no meaning to life. And so I was working on the plantation then, like you said in the intro, I was working on oil palm plantation. So I decided to leave the plantation to go and volunteer, with the mainstream human rights community, where you have the likes of Ken Saro that is here. Ken Saro was a former student union leader in Nigeria, very privileged and very sophisticated officers at then in the military, when the military was, lording over Nigeria. So we are so proud of him. And several other comrades. I volunteered with them for 8 years before I established the Ogoni Solidarity Forum to continue the struggle. And we did that because we observed that when Nigeria returned to full-blown democracy in 1999, that they have employed the son of Ken Saro-Wiwa as an advisor to Obasanjo. And they have given appointments, juicy appointments to children of the other Ogoni Matthias. And they set up what they call Machikuka Committee to reconcile Ogoni with Share. We knew that they were going for Ogoni oil. And the leader of Movement for the Survival of Ogoni people then, the second in command to Ken Saro-Wiwa, Ledumite, has been made the chairman, Niger Delta Technical Committee. You don't talk when you are eating. So we decided to create Ogoni Solidarity Forum as an alternative platform to fight, to keep the oil in the soil and advance the struggle of Ken Saro-Wiwa. And by the grace of God, we have continued. 26 years after the murder of Ken Saro-Wiwa, the oil is in the soil. Even if government has come and threatened fire with brimstone every time that they must take the oil by force, forceful resumption, but we have resisted with the help of other comrades. And so we continue to do that. And so during the time, the government of Nigeria thought that we were just making noise. And so they hired UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, to go and conduct environmental audit of Ogoni. What they found out in Ogoni was mind-blowing. Of course, before they came, we have observed that the 30 years of oil theft and continual gas flaring in close proximity to human habitation, the pollution that has happened over time has completely destroyed our ecosystem in a place where there is almost an absence of government. The water we drink is the water from well. The rich people can dig a borehole, but the ordinary people, 80% of the people drink from the well. And so we didn't know that what was killing our people was because we were drinking heavily polluted water. We didn't know. We didn't know that the air we were taking in was filled up with hydrocarbon. We didn't know. We didn't know that the land we claimed we were farming on was dead and that we were eating poison. But we just observed that our people were dying in their numbers. We observed that women were giving birth to disabled children. Very strange, alien. We observed that young girls were having early menopause, 20 years old. We observed very strange ailments, skin diseases. We didn't know that it was the soot emitted over the year in the process of flaring gas, later for acid rain, to destroy everything it touches, including, because the environment has been overcooked and people sleep outside at night to take fresh air. We didn't know that we were inhaling soot and we were rubbing our skin with soot. Until people started washing, spreading things at night, and in the morning when you wake up, they were all black because of soot. And the livelihoods of the people, being predominantly fishermen and farmers, livelihoods were dying because the farm were no longer yielding any reserves. The fishes had migrated to the deeper ocean because when you flare gas in close where the river is, the fishes don't stay in daylight. So when gas is flared, there is 24-hour daylight in the river. So when it is night, it is also day. So these fishes migrate, and the Ogoni people don't have something. The money we get from that we train our children in school and take care of the health of our people. So when you no longer have money, your children no longer go to school. If they are sick, you can't take care of their health challenges because there's no money. And so poverty setting, hunger setting. So when UNEP came to do their audit, in summary, what UNEP found out was, one, that pollution was widespread in Ogoni, that most folks have been exposed to chronic oil pollution throughout their lives. 3, that surface water throughout the creeks of Ogoni have hydrocarbons. 4, that hydrocarbon pollution have reached groundwater at 41 sites they examined. That there were 8 cm layer of oil on every water taken in Ogoni. That was the report from UNEP. That all the fisheries in Ogoni have been destroyed. And that there was benzene, a cancer-causing carcinogen, found in the water taken in Ogoni, to the level of 900 times above the level recommended by World Health Organization. So there was that benzene in our water. And the hydrocarbon were found at some places 1,000 times worse above Nigerian drinking water standards. And that Shell has not met the minimum requirement of environmental guidelines and standards for petroleum industries in Nigeria, what they call EGASPIN. As far as we are concerned, that was a death sentence. That was a death sentence. That all the water we have been taking is coated with HCM or crude oil. That 5 meters of the land as of 2011 was dead because the report was submitted on 4th of August 2011 by UNEP. So that's where we are. Nothing has changed. UNEP asked Nigerian government to set up health registry to look at what has happened. Why were people dying in Ogoni in their numbers? What was killing them? But we know that respiratory sicknesses were the main cause of death. Every traditional ruler in Ogoni now are young people. Life has become so short to the point that if people die at the age of 40, we thank God for a life well spent. And so I'm happy that we are here. I think you add your voice. This is the Heroes Week of Action. On Wednesday will be 10th of November. It will be 26 years after Ken Saro-Wiwa and others were murdered. And that's why I couldn't go to Glasgow. We are here organizing events. We have some support from IPM SDL here, and we are working together. We want all of you to have your voice, that people are dying in Ogoni, that the government and the corporation must do something about the health of the people. We are yet to see one point where people can drink potable drinking water. We are still drinking from the well because there are no alternative. Thank you very much for listening to me this hour.
Thank you so much, AkpoBari, for that really amazing testimony and stories of resistance and struggle from the Ogoni community. And just after the hearing, just a reminder to everyone that there will be we'll be sending out ways for people to support the communities and the organizations who have given testimony today, and that will include the Ogoni people as well. So thank you so much, AkpoBari, and I'll pass over to my co-facilitator to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rihanna. Thanks very much, AkpoBari, for starting us off today on this People's Health hearing. I'm going to introduce our next person, our next witness who's providing testimony today, and that is Patty Miranda. Patty Miranda is a feminist, lawyer, campaigner, and disaster survivor from the Philippines with a deep interest in global health, human rights, and gender in emergencies. She is now studying for a Master's of Law in Health, Law, and Society at the University of Bristol. So Patty, please take it away. And I believe there's video or slides with Patty's presentation, so if we could get those shared. Thanks very much.
I'm Patty Miranda from the Philippines. I'm a feminist, a campaigner, migrant, and other things, but most recently a grad student. My story today is also my family's story. Stories matter. My father insists we eat dinner together every night. My brother and I have to join him at the table to eat and talk and share stories over a home-cooked meal. It's tradition. Our story is just one of the many stories of the many communities affected by the climate emergency. The typhoons in 2020 were especially devastating because of the impacts of COVID-19 and the lockdown restrictions in my country. The world's strongest typhoon Goni hit the Philippines in October 2020. Less than a month later, Typhoon Vamco, locally known as Ulysses, flooded our home in Lower Antipolo Rizal province. 4 days before Typhoon Vamco hit, a former work colleague and friend sent nachos. Many Filipinos send each other ayuda to show care during challenging times. 3 days before impact, I was working. I took a pre-Zoom meeting selfie. During the meeting, I had to keep my video off to hide all the boxes containing all our stuff, which will make moving easier in case of flooding. 2 days before impact, my best friend Joel called from Thailand while I was out shopping for last-minute groceries and running errands. His mother and grandmother also live in the same province in Rizal. We talked about what our families were doing to prepare. I posted this picture on social media a day before impact. Risk and persistent precarity have become a way of life for many communities in the global south. People are forced to live their lives the best they can between disasters. In many places, disasters can come one after the other before anyone's fully recovered, while those in power and those benefiting from the global majority's suffering hijack resilience narratives to escape accountability. VAMCO is the Philippines' 21st storm of 2020. After several landfalls in different parts of the Philippines, we felt the typhoon's wrath. We monitored the situation the whole night until we lost electricity. The floods rose quickly early in the morning. What you see here is the only road out of our village. It was thigh-high where I lived, and other parts of the city, the water engulfed entire homes, shops, factories, and single-story offices. My best friend Salma, we went to law school together, offered to help. I told her telephone lines were down and I only had 18% battery left. We had to turn off the circuit breaker to avoid electrocution. There were massive blackouts across many cities. My family had our go bags ready. We had food, emergency batteries, and torches. The smell of contaminated flood water was overpowering. I filed for emergency leave at work. Messages and prayers from family and friends and loved ones lifted our spirits. My fiancé is from Glasgow, and he provided emotional support long distance. Family pets Gold and Cleo were also affected. To this day, they fear the sound of rain and thunder. My brother Miguel would comfort them every time. 2 days later, with electricity restored, my father surprised us by inviting us all to dinner downstairs. My sense that this was his fight for normalcy amid chaos and loss. We still had days of cleaning ahead of us. We chose to honor tradition. 3 days later, I tweeted that while my family is relatively safe, hundreds of thousands of families still needed life-saving support. When discussing the climate emergency, technical and legal jargon can frequently obscure the human faces and stories at the heart of each disaster. A few days on, the house was still coated in a layer of mud, a mixture of stagnant water, debris, and raw urban sewage. I developed angry red blistery rashes all over my legs, which my doctor later on diagnosed as allergic contact dermatitis. To this day, there are scars. Meanwhile, more than 14,000 people were still in one of the evacuation centers in my province, Rizal. COVID restrictions and threats of post-disaster outbreaks heightened risks. Dengue, diarrhea, leptospirosis, to name a few. It has been said many times before that the climate crisis is also a massive inequality crisis. For some communities, such as mine in the Philippines, the negative effects will be felt sooner, more harshly, and more frequently. We experience 20 tropical cyclones per year on average. I retweeted 4 days after the flooding this map showing the path of the 3 most destructive typhoons that hit the Philippines from October to November 2020. More than 30 provinces, including mine, have been hit multiple times, and millions of people have experienced devastating losses. This photo is from a week later. After long, hard work, we managed to clear the mud and the debris. This felt like a huge win. That same day, I posted an illustration by artist-activist Tarantadong Calbo, which reads, "Being resilient is tiring." Is it truly that easy to forget that this happened less than a year ago, also in November? It's not lost on me, and many of us, that a year on at COP26, the most affected people and communities, those who have contributed the least to the climate crisis, are still excluded from climate policy decision-making tables. The pain is still fresh for me. I've moved homes 4 times this year. I am now in Glasgow with my fiancé, almost 7,000 miles from home, and my family, who continue to live in our community in Lower Antipolo, Rizal. It's COP26. I feel so privileged to be here. I hope this week's events and the People's Health hearing today sparks curiosity in all the stories out there that have not been told. For my mental health, my art has helped me cope. I made this collage. It's called Solidarity. It's my reminder that we have the power to build new stories. Stories of collective action, liberation, and healing. Let's build those stories together. Salamat po.
Thanks very much, Patty, for sharing your video. Is there anything you'd like to add? We have maybe 5 or so minutes left if you'd like to add anything.
No, I just really quickly, just to thank everyone that has made my being here today possible. There are so many stories. Mine is just one of millions of stories out there. If it can at least spark that interest in all the stories that have not been told or yet to be told, I think that for me is my purpose for being here today. And I'd also like to thank family and friends who are here today, who joined the hearing. Joel, who I mentioned in the slides, is also here today. Hello, Joel, all the way from Thailand. Thank you again. That's all I want to say. Salamat po. Maraming salamat po.
Thanks very much, Patty, for sharing that very moving personal story with us today in this space. It's an honor to be able to be let into your life in that way. We will continue with the testimonies, and we'll make space for questions and reflections maybe at the end of the session, because we are tight on time today. So Rhiannon, would you like to introduce the next testimony?
Yes, thank you so much, Vaj and Patty. So the next speaker giving testimony is Gopal Krishna, who is a law and public policy researcher. He is the convener of Toxic Watch Alliance and has been working on the subject of the climate crisis since 2000. He has exposed several carbon trade frauds, and his work on waste and river basins reveals poverty of imagination inherent in the business as usual approach of ruling parties, their donors, and public and private organizations. He did his master's in law and doctoral thesis on corporate crimes and the accountability of public institutions, with specific reference to the industrial disaster of Bhopal. He has co-authored Disputes over Ganga, Kosi Deluge, The Worst Still to Come, The Return of the Giants, Different Regions, Same Logic, and the Omnishandles of UID. He has been a petitioner in the Supreme Court and a co-petitioner in the National Green Tribunal. He is the co-founder of Ban Asbestos Network of India and has worked with national and international organizations. So it really is such a pleasure and an honor to introduce Dr. Gopal Krishna as our next speaker. So take it away. I don't think we can hear you. Is your audio connected? This is very strange. Oh, wait, sorry, just try now. Are you able to try without the headphones?
Rhiannon, while we work out Gopal's technical problems, do you want to maybe move to the next testimony and then we could come back to Gopal perhaps, or would you rather wait?
Gopal, are you happy for us to do the next speaker while we sort out your audio? Actually, I don't know how I'm going to hear Gopal telling me that. But okay. Cool. Hi, Gopal, can you hear me?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, yay, okay, amazing. You're audible. We can't see you.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
I'll just switch on my video. Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing, okay.
Yeah.
The floor is yours. Thank you.
Sorry for the audio problem. After having heard Celestine and Patty, I think the core issue which emerges is the issue of unredressed injustice in climate negotiations since the beginning of UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. I share their agony. I share the spirit which they bring here for us. Both the presentations were very inspiring. I will be focusing specifically on how movement of waste within the nations and across the nations internationally, movement of waste from richer areas to poorer areas adds another layer of inequality, which Patty talked about, that climate crisis is indeed about inequality remaining unaddressed. So I will begin with the specific issue of environmental health impact of proposed 100 waste incinerator projects in India. So people in the deep environmental movement know that everything which nature does, it does not create waste. Everything which body corporates do creates waste. Like all industrial activities, agricultural activities, services sector, healthcare sector, they all produce waste. And what is the way to deal with it? The Independent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has recognized this, the significance of contribution from the waste sector to the greenhouse gas emissions. In 2005, IPCC had estimated that 5% of the global greenhouse gas emission comes from waste. They refer to it as post-consumer waste. Post-consumer waste. But the most important thing to factor in the climate negotiations is that the Kyoto Protocol referred to waste incineration, waste burning, waste combustion as a source of greenhouse gas emission. But it is not the only international law which deals with waste-related pollution contributing to greenhouse gases and consequently to public health crisis. There is UN's Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants. There are heavy metals which are emitted, like mercury, which is covered under UN's Minamata Convention. Most people know the Minamata disaster which happened in Japan. Also, the persistent organic pollutants which are emitted because of waste burning, either both in closed burning as well as in open burning. It emits persistent organic pollutants like dioxin, which was used as a chemical weapon under the brand name Agent Orange by British Army in Malaysia and the US Army in Vietnam. And the food chain contamination which happened continues to be a matter of concern and a study, and the health impact continues to be felt in both Malaysia and Indonesia, and in Vietnam. So the core reason I mentioned this issue to be brought before the public hearing at the COP26 is that unless waste from all industrial, agricultural, services and healthcare sectors are managed in a way which is sensitive to public health and environmental health, waste-related projects cannot be deemed a solution to climate crisis. But the tragedy is that the UN carbon trade projects which include and endorse, approve waste burning as carbon credit projects, as climate solution projects, they do not realize that in India, its failure has consistently shown that carbon trade in waste-related matters, as in other matters, is not part of climate solution, but it is part of a problem. And it's not only, it's definitely a dangerous interference in the atmosphere, but it is also a dangerous interference in the human body, not only of the present generation, but also of the future generation. Because of biomagnification of the toxins which are emitted from waste incineration, they have a durability, and they are also passengers without passports. They are long distance travelers. So what is happening is that waste incineration projects have been penalized in India, and for being highly polluting in nature. For instance, in New Delhi, New Delhi's Okhla locality, Jindal company has proposed, had installed a waste to energy project, which is a waste incineration based thermal power plant in a residential area next to a bird sanctuary. The judicial verdict here penalized it of 2.5 million Indian currency. And while it was being penalized, it was continuing to earn carbon credits, which was approved by the Clean Development Mechanism under the UNFCCC. So this shows that the carbon trade in waste sector like this is fraudulent. It is not part of the climate solution. The issue is also of extracting energy by biomass burning. Can biomass burning be considered renewable in India and also elsewhere? As this is being promoted as a renewable energy. This is actually fossil fuel burning in effect, because the circular, the entire biological cycle is disturbed by waste burning, makes the entire circular process in nature linear. So this is totally unscientific, and in India it is a tried, tested and failed project. And now Chinese technologies, boiler technologies, which are facing protests both in China and India, they are being pursued and promoted as a new and renewable energy.
Okay,
Biomass
it looks
burning.
like we have lost Gopal for
Am I audible now? Am I
can hear
audible?
him.
Yeah, am I audible?
I can hear you, Gopal.
Yeah, okay. So I will continue with my presentation. So what my entire my submission boils down to is that policies which promote movement of waste under national and international law amount to naturalizing and normalizing transport of waste from richer areas to poorer areas. Such transport contributes to climate crisis by consuming fossil fuels. Unless this unsound practice is stopped, banned, disease burden on poor will add yet another layer of indebtedness and inequality. Therefore, I would say that any kind of climate justice will not be possible unless justice related to waste which is generated in every activity, every human activity, every body corporate activity is taken into consideration. One can engage with it in a scientific way and reduce at least 5% of the global GHG emissions. Unless this is looked at in the justice framework, which this public hearing is rightly about, justice in the original position means that in this original state of nature, how is one to look at end of life product? There should be life cycle analysis of products before they are launched for consumers and for human beings in general. Unless there is life cycle analysis, there will be carbon footprints. And there is another thing which is also happening, that these waste projects are sited in poorer areas. So they are already suffering from different layers of inequality, and this climate related, also waste related pollutions and pollutants add another layer of disease burden on the poor people in particular. Although pollutants do not discriminate between rich and the poor, but when it comes to the health impact and the redressals of the health consequences of climate crisis and pollution, industrial pollution related crisis, there is the burden on poor is higher. And therefore, I totally agree with the Patty when she said that climate negotiations are about engaging with the issue of injustice and inequality. So I would conclude for now, and I will engage with questions and observations from other fellow participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gopal. What an amazing testimony and amazing work and resistance that you've been doing for so many years now. So thank you so much. And I will pass over to Baj to introduce our next testimony.
Thanks very much, Rhiannon, and thanks very much, Gopal, for your testimony, which is really inspiring and compels us to action. Our next testimony comes from the Asia Pacific region, from Raki Up. Raki is part of the Free West Papua campaign, which was founded by the independence leader Benny Wenda, and exists to raise awareness about the genocide and ecocide in West Papua. Their agenda is to create international awareness and to find support for the right to self-determination for West Papua. Raki is a spokesperson for the Free West Papua campaign as a voice for Indigenous Papuans. And Raki, welcome to the People's Health Hearing, and we look forward to hearing your testimony. Please take it away. Raki, you're on mute.
Are you able to speak now, Raki?
Yeah, I'm now able to speak. Yeah, the host had to unlock me. Apologies. Yes, but thank you so much for the introducing. And first of all, really inspired by the previous speakers with their stories and insights they gave to me. And I want to thank the People's Health Hearing and all the organizations and partners who organized this, because my slogan, which you will see in my slides, which I will share right now. I hope you can see that. Let me see. There you go.
Yes, we can see.
My slogan, system change by story change. And I'm gonna share you my personal story, how I became the person I am today, which is the indigenous climate change activist, freedom fighter, as spokesperson of our campaign. And to kick off my presentation, I want all the participants to imagine that world's largest gold mine is located nearby your home, your city, or your village. And that this world's largest gold mine is also the world's second largest copper mine. And that because of these activities of this extractive industry, the rivers which you and your people have used for many thousands of years for fishing, for water, and for every daily activity, have been polluted, have been poisoned due to this extractive industry's toxic waste. And because their activities are making so much profit, you and your family have been forced to go away because they wanted to use your land, the land where you have lived, where your house is standing for hundreds, for generations long, to make more profit, to make more mining activities. Because you don't like that, and the villagers as well, you go and protest. So this corporation asks an army in a neighboring country to support them, they pay them, and they force all of you with violence to get away from your land. Many people of your village, of your family have been murdered. And in the last 60 years, imagine, not 100 years ago, but the last 60 years, more than one third of your population have been murdered. And an anthropologist who made music, an anthropologist who was a musician as well, who made music about what is happening in these villages against his people, was murdered. His family was forced to left the country. This sounds like a faraway show from the history, but unfortunately, it is not a fantasy story. This is the story of the indigenous peoples of West Papua. This is my personal story because the anthropologist and the musician was my father, Arnold Ab. And me and my mom, 3 brothers, had to flee West Papua. And we arrived in the Netherlands where I was just a boy. So from a political refugee from West Papua, after Indonesian military assassinated my father 4 months before I was born, I came to the Netherlands and I joined the Dutch army because I thought that was the way to contribute to peace and justice and human rights. I was young and naive. Now I understand the political dynamics behind this militarism, which also is a huge contributor to the climate crisis we see today. So this is my story, which showcases West Papua. For those who doesn't know where West Papua is, it's right above Australia, the island of New Guinea, and it's the western half of the island of New Guinea right there. And I'm gonna zoom in. This is the island split in two. The eastern half is the Papua New Guinea, the independent nation of Papua New Guinea, and the western half is West Papua, which unfortunately is a province of the Indonesia we know today. So what went wrong? First, we were a colony of the Netherlands. As you can see, they prepared the West Papuans to an independent nation. They gave the West Papuans the Morning Star flags, as you can see there. We had an army, we had a first government in the early 60s until the United States came in and forced the Dutch to hand over West Papua to the Indonesia we know today. And this was the reality which started from that moment on. After a so-called referendum in 1969, 2 years before, a US corporate gold mine, the world's largest copper mine, world's largest gold mine, second largest copper mine, located in the heart of West Papua, destroyed the environment and violated a lot of human rights. Not much later, we got BP coming in as well. Once again, as you can see, clearing rainforest. And before that, obviously, indigenous peoples lived there for more than hundreds, if not thousands of years in balance with nature. And because more and more companies saw this huge rainforest and all these resources, palm oil companies came in to plant what they do, palm oils, for all the products here in the West, and left behind, this kind of landscapes for the indigenous communities in West Papua. And these are the images which West Papuans have been confronted, not the images, the violence committed by, colonial Indonesia's forces against indigenous Papuans who lived there for more than 40,000 of years in balance with the nature. So these companies are paying directly to the occupation, to the violence committed by Indonesian military, and basically allowing them to do that. And these are the images, unfortunately, I have to see to make you feel how horrible the situation in West Papua is. My father's story, as I mentioned, is just one of the hundreds of thousands of stories. Confirmed NGOs reports more than 500,000 indigenous West Papuans have lost their lives the last 60 years due to Indonesian colonization, supported by the Western governments and their extractive industries. So how is this story linked to the climate crisis? This is why I am here in Glasgow. Because how are we going to stop the climate crisis if we don't know what is happening on the front line? So West Papua is part of the world's largest tropical island, housing one of the most unique lands and marine biodiversity. So the narrative of a lot of environmental organizations are, protecting the forest, protecting animals. Yes, of course, we support that. But if they cared about the lives of indigenous peoples and protected and campaigned for their rights, these animals and trees were still there. It's that simple. We need a new narrative. And that's why I'm here with our campaign. Because for us, it's about human lives. It's about our culture disappearing, and we are the best protectors of world's largest tropical island, housing the second/third largest rainforest in the world. That is what happened on Ogoni. And these are the reports. Don't bother, just let them there about what is happening in West Papua. And why is our story so fundamental for those who want to fight climate change? Indigenous perspective on climate change, which showcase West Papua. This is one of the outcomes of the United Nations panel, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Although indigenous peoples constitute less than 5% of the world's population, they safeguarded 80% of world's remaining biodiversity. Thereby, they play an important role in the recent biodiversity. At the same time, more than 96% of all deforestation in the world happens on the same indigenous lands due to coal, mining, fossil fuels, and so on and so on. So these two numbers basically show us the way out of the climate crisis. It's the most effective, most just, and cheapest climate solution there is. Protect the lives of indigenous peoples and the frontline communities who feel the effect of these extractive industries. So yes, Nature.com described the uniqueness of the island of New Guinea. So when we understand what is happening in New Guinea and what happens in Nigeria to the Ogoni people, what's happening in the Amazon and much more communities around the world, we can understand the root causes where the climate crisis started and the structures which have created that. That is basically what the science is telling us. And the same United Nations are saying that ensuring the collective rights of indigenous peoples to land, territories, and resources, not only for their well-being, but also for addressing some of the most pressing global challenges, such as climate change and environmental degradation. So the solution is very clear, but at the same time, we see a lot of silence in the global north, in the mainstream media, at environmental organizations, bringing forward the wrong narrative. And that's why I believe in the slogan, system change by story change. How is it possible that I have to educate Dutch environmental organizations or even WWF about what is happening on world's largest tropical island? You should know that, and you should facilitate our voice. If you did that 50 years ago, we didn't have a genocide nor an ecocide in West Papua. So how is it possible that these fundamental organizations, which should be our first ally, are still pitching the wrong story? And politicians here in COP saying that, cheering about, ending deforestation by 2030, of course we should support that. How are they going to do that without having the best preservers, protectors of these environments, which are the indigenous peoples, on the table? Without underlining protecting the rights of indigenous peoples is the best solution to protect deforestation. That's exactly what we need to, underline. We should bring that forward, that these are greenwash talks about what is happening here in COP. So, but we have a way out. Because the world is silent, we educated the world in the last 10 years under the leadership of His Excellency Benny Wenda. And we've created a lot of momentum by building bridges with different movements, also educating environmental organizations about the indigenous perspective and the role of indigenous peoples in preserving biodiversity and forest. So we built alliances with grassroots movements, with NGOs, with politicians, with mainstream media to educate them about what is happening in West Papua. We've lobbied in the Pacific across the world. We become a member within the Melanesian Spearhead Group. And now we also got more than 2 million indigenous West Papuans supporting our cause and our campaign. So we built up a huge momentum, understanding that we live without freedom, having very little resources. We have created this chains of hope and optimism. So now we got more than 80 countries in the world demanding a United Nations human rights fact-finding mission to West Papua, which is a huge diplomatic win for our campaign and our indigenous government in waiting, because Indonesia is still not allowing them to do their observing. But this is why we're here in Glasgow. We've launched the Green State Vision this week, fulfilling in the words of the United Nations themselves and the world leaders saying that indigenous peoples play an important role. Yes, indeed. So we envision this. You can visit it yourself at greenstatevision.info. And while we have challenged all these world leaders that you cannot lead the way, We know how to manage pristine land. We know how to manage world's largest biodiversity hotspot. And we are willing to lead. We are no victims. We are climate leaders. Thank you so, so much. This was my presentation. Thank you so, so much.
Thanks very, very much, Raki, for sharing your story. That was hugely inspiring and very educational and really mobilizing as well. So thank you for sharing your story with us in this space. For everyone who might have reflections or thoughts or questions that they might want to pose to the people who have given testimony so far, please remember that we do have the menti.com link, which is in the chat, which you can use to submit your questions and reflections. We will be reviewing them after our next testimony, which is the last testimony for this session. So please do leave any comments or questions at that point where speakers or our listeners as well might want to be able to respond to some of your thoughts. So for the final testimony for this session, I'll hand it off to Rhiannon to introduce it.
Amazing, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm actually crying. So thank you so much, Raki, for your testimony. So our next speaker is Mafal Makalanda. Mafal is an indigenous Ifugao leader from Hunganyai, indigenous peoples organization in the Cagayan Valley. They are a member of the International Indigenous Peoples Movement for Self-Determination and Liberation, a global network of indigenous peoples communities, rights activists, advocates, and organizations committed to advancing the rights of indigenous peoples to self-determination, land, life, human rights, and against imperialism. So it's such an honor to have you with us, Mafal, and I will hand over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. I hope my internet connection is okay. So thank you for the organizers for this opportunity, for inviting us to share our stories from the communities affected by this climate change. Well, so I am working with my fellow indigenous peoples group in Cagayan Valley from the different tribes and ethnic groups. Cagayan Valley is located in the northern part of the Philippines. So just like the other indigenous peoples communities worldwide, we have rich natural resources. However, these are now endangered due to various destructive projects being such as the large-scale inland and offshore mining, the construction of dams, other development projects related to tourism. And all of these projects affects the livelihood of the people. It displaces also the communities from their homes. It disrupts the indigenous practices and ways of life of the people. And of course, this in turn affects the health of the people. We have been telling the companies, international community, and the public that we, the indigenous peoples, along with other marginalized and vulnerable sectors, are the least contributors to the worsening of the climate change. We have been experiencing the climate change that we are now experiencing. It is actually these multinational companies backed by the government that actually destroys our environment and also the lives of the communities and the people. And it worsened the case of climate change. For example, the massive flood or the massive loss of trees that cause a flood. For example, in the place where I am, for example, in 2020, it was actually even mentioned by Patty, we experienced a massive flood in our region due to the loss of the trees. But actually, the loss of trees is basically because of these destructive projects that is being operated in our communities. In the Philippines, there are 6 approved FTAA mining applications, and two of these mining applications are located in our region in Cagayan Valley, and one is actually in Didipio village. I don't know. We submitted a video, a very short one. I don't know if we can play that later after my testimony, because it's also a testimony of a resident of that village. So in that village, Didipio village, the Oceana Gold Mining Company is operating its mining operation. Yan. So during the 25 years mining operation of the Oceana Gold, the village lost their potable water. Most of their rice farms were destroyed due to the chemicals coming from the mining company. There were also families who were displaced from their homes. And due to the massive pollution, the health of the villagers, especially the children, was greatly affected. They experienced stomach aches, chest pains, and vomiting. When the farmers went to tend to their rice farms, they were infected by some kind of skin diseases. So they know that their rice paddies were also affected by the chemicals. So this also greatly affected their livelihood. And if your livelihood is affected, definitely even your health is affected, because how can you pay for the hospital bills of those, for example, those children who were affected, no, by the pollution also caused by mining. If and how they it's also very difficult for them as poor farmers to pay for their food, for their daily food, due to the loss of their livelihoods. Yan. So we have been actually voicing out our situation, the effects or the impacts of this environment, or the effects of these projects to the people and to the environment. But we are being silenced or under attack by our own government, so that we will step aside, or we will not try to voice out our situation, and also to stop in defending, in protecting our natural resources and the environment. So actually, as human rights and environmental defenders, we are actually attacked by our government. Um, we are being red tagged uh, just because we are um, um, voicing out our current situation, and trying our best to offer um, alternative solutions. Actually, we are even helping our government to come up with alternative solutions. However, instead of hearing us out, we are under attack, um, to include to include the things that we are now experiencing due to the effects of the large scale mining in our communities and other destructive projects. For example, where I personally experienced the massive flood due to the loss of trees in our place. The houses were actually submerged by the water, so we need to stay on the rooftop, so that we will not drown. No, so but then after that, we actually voice out or tell the public, our government, that actually the cause of this is the great loss of the forests. The trees are now gone, but instead of listening to us, they they even red tagged us. So it's very challenging right now to be a human rights and environmentalist defender in the Philippines. Um, However, even we are now experiencing these things, we continue our work in voicing out, in expressing our current situation. We still provide alternative. We conduct training and discussions with the communities in order to strengthen our unities and our work, and in order for us also to be able to forward our concerns and our suggestions in order to gather more support, not only at the national level, but also at the international level. So this forum is it's a very good opportunity for us to be able to achieve this goal. So I think that's a short sharing of what's happening in our communities. And perhaps if there are some questions later, then I'm happy to answer them to the best of my abilities. Thank you once again, and good luck for the succeeding activities of the organization.
Thank you so much, Natalia. Another amazing testimony, and thank you so much for coming here to tell your story. We now have a brief video to share with you, and I will let Ben share it.
Good morning to everybody. I am the chairperson of the SAPACMI organization, Samahang Pangkarapatan ng Katutubong Magsasaka at Manggagawa Incorporation. I don't know how to interpret it in English. So maybe somebody to interpret that to all of you. Thank you. So here in our barangay or village, Didipio, Kasibu, where the Oceana Gold located, Municipality of Kasibu, Province of Nueva Vizcaya, Philippines. Before, there is no Oceana Gold here in our place. We have a clean water, no air pollution, no noise pollution, no depletion of water, a clean environment, and actually, we are surrounded with trees, and we are living in agricultural land. Pollution, water pollution, noise pollution. This is now the situation in this village, Didipio, Kasibu, Nueva Vizcaya. Because of the big operation of the Oceana Gold mining here in our place, I believe it's a big impact of the climate change. So how can we control the problem of climate change if our government allowed their operation? So this is a big question to all of us. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.
Vaj, would you like to introduce the next thing that we're going to do to wrap up this session?
Sure. Thanks everyone for all the speakers who have shared testimony for this session. It's been a fantastic start to the hearing, and I think it's already given us a lot to think about. And we can see from the Menti that there have been a number of questions that have already come in, some thoughts and reflections and queries from the audience. What I suggest we do, just because we are fairly short in time and we want to give people space to get up and stretch and look at the online gallery and tend to the rest of their lives rather than being in front of the computer for the whole day, is what I think we'll do is we'll perhaps share some of these questions, and maybe if we could spotlight Ken and Man, who are listeners from Nigeria and Philippines, and we can pose some of these questions and reflections to them, and perhaps they can start to share some of the things that they think in the next 9 minutes that we have. So do you think we could at least Ken and, I can't see you, Ken and Man, if you can at least turn on your cameras and perhaps they can get spotlighted, and we can start to maybe share some of these questions. Some of them are fairly specific to different speakers, but maybe we'll start with a few general ones first. The first fairly general one that I see, which maybe Ken and Man, given what you've already heard, and I'll paste into the chat as well, is how do we make sure that communities are more involved in our quest for climate resilience and that we are addressing their challenges? So I don't know, Man and Ken, and what you've heard, whether you've had any thoughts on what we can do to make sure communities participate more in the quest for climate resilience.
I could respond to that. This is Ken Henshaw. It's quite interesting, and I think a response to that question speaks directly to the very profound presentation by Celestine AkpoBari, and also the very excellent, presentation and testimony by Raki. I mean, Raki specifically said that protecting the rights of indigenous people is the best way to stop, climate catastrophe, is the best way to stop deforestation. And Celestine also gives a very thorough analysis on how the resilience of indigenous communities in Nigeria's Niger Delta have been able to push back, corporate interests and all the contamination and destruction of the environment that comes with it. And so to the question, how do we strengthen local capacities? I think that as civil society organizations, as people in the movement for climate justice, we need to center all our activities and all our thinking and all our actions around communities, around people who live in the front lines of climate change, who are at the receiving end of the worst climate impact. And listening to all the testimonies, one thing kept striking me, that these are testimonies from the front line. These are testimonies from the grassroots. And these are not things you will hear the heads of government speak at the COP. And that's why events such as this one is absolutely important. As the COP is going on, as so-called world leaders are pushing whatever agenda it is they are pushing, as corporate businesses are pushing their own agenda, it's impossible that it's very, very important, rather, that we create forums such as this that project the voice of indigenous people and tell a different COP story. This is how we get more people involved, by escalating this kind of stories, pushing this kind of stories to the front line, pushing this kind of stories to the front burner of the conversation. And that's my response to that.
Thanks very much, Ken. Man, do you have any thoughts?
So I also believe that regarding the question, communities should be more aware and should be more active in pushing for climate resiliency, or no, I do not want to use the term resilience because it is so much bastardized and abused by the global north. So my organization, I have been part of organizations that are that have community-based approach in all our advocacy. So I am very active in disaster relief and rehabilitation work. And one of our best approach is to build the capacities and knowledge of communities so that they can take care of their own health, and they can also prepare and be better able to respond to disaster. The sharing of the 5 previous speakers are really heartrending, and we can have inspiration from what they have shared. For example, I can relate very well to what Patty Miranda shared about her experience during the Typhoon Ulysses, because I, for one, really witnessed how devastated many communities when Typhoon Ulysses hit the country in late 2020. And the rays of hope is that these organizations that shared their experience and their stories is that they are very much engaged in organizing. raising awareness and building alliances, and that will really help in really putting to the forefront the issues of the communities, especially the the indigenous peoples communities.
Thanks very much, Man. Gopal wants to add a few thoughts as well. And Gopal, there's another question directed specifically at you, wanting to know a little bit more about carbon trading fraud. So if you could answer both of them in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah. One is that what can communities do? The public institutions in general have pretended to be surprised in the face of environmental crisis and environmental disaster. These pretensions need to be factored in, because the at stake is the memory of the public institutions, the memory of the communities, and the memory of the nature, like rivers also have memory. The memory of the rivers and the memory of the communities married together alone can resist the onslaught of corporations and illegitimate public institutions who pretend to be surprised. I think unless polluters are weakened and protectors are strengthened, that the gulf between the desire for protection and the ongoing degradation will remain there. The protectors need to be strengthened. As of now, the laws are weakening the protectors and strengthening the violators and polluters. With regard to carbon trade fraud, I think for long one has heard environmentalists across the globe from the very outset that carbon trade is fraudulent. It is not a solution. It is part of the problem. But in my experience in the last 20 years, having engaged with specific projects, I know with micro details which one can demonstrate with field visits, with documentation, that carbon trade in waste management is fraudulent. A polluting unit, for instance, in Delhi, in New Delhi, is fined by these courts here in India, and at the same time they earn carbon credits by the Civil Code. What more can be more demonstrative than this? That a polluting unit is getting carbon credits, and similar 100 projects are proposed across the country. These projects are tried, tested, and failed projects. These are fraudulent projects, and they are being pushed, bulldozed by incinerator companies, unmindful of the health impact and the carbon footprint they bring in. Thank you. I hope I was able to respond.
Thanks so much, Gopal. We are coming up towards the end of the first session, so we won't have time to answer all the questions that were posed, but we will find a way to perhaps collect them and find a way to respond to them collectively so people still get their questions answered. One question we can answer quickly is one of the questions was whether there have been whether there have been health hearings at previous COPs, and to the organizers' knowledge, there hasn't been specifically a health hearing at previous COPs, although there have been people's trials of corporations and things like that at previous ones. But this is the first hearing dedicated to health that we know of. But as Rhiannon has said, it's the first, but it won't be the last. So that's our hope anyway. And so we do want to give you time to get up and stretch your legs and get anything else you need done in your lives to go get it done in the next half hour or so. The next session of testimony will be starting in exactly half an hour, depending on your time zone. It's 30 minutes from now that we'll be starting again. So please do get up, do take care of yourselves, take care of anything you need to get taken care of. Please go and see the online gallery, which is, the link is in the chat. And then we'll see you here again for the second round of testimony in half an hour. Rhiannon, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just to say thank you so much to our speakers and our listeners. What a powerful and inspiring and rage-fueling way to start the day. So thank you so much to all of you. And yeah, look forward to hopefully seeing lots of you back at 11:45 UK time, or in exactly half an hour, whatever your time is. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone.